Negotiations are like the wild, wild west. There's so many things that can happen. One week, it can look like this is the site I'm ending up at, and the next week, the deal can be dead. And then the week after that, the deal can be alive again. So I try to tell my clients to keep a steady, like down the middle of the road mindset. Don't get too excited about anything, and definitely don't get too bummed about anything, because ultimately, we almost always end up at a better site.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the latest edition of FranCoach's Franchising 101 podcast. I am Tim Parmeter, founder and CEO of FranCoach and your podcast host. Today, we have a guest joining us to talk about a topic in franchising that we have not really talked about on this show. We're almost 270 episodes into this bad boy over 5 years. And oh my gosh, we've not talked about this. So we're going to talk about, as a franchisee, finding commercial real estate and all the ways you can do that, all the ways you can mess it up. And our guest is one of the leading resources in the franchising world to help franchisors and franchisees make this happen. So that is our guest. I am going to be thrilled to have them join us. But first, quick reminder of who we are. FranCoach is the premier franchise consulting company. Our number one goal is to properly educate people on franchise ownership to determine if it is the best path for them, and if so, help you find your absolute best franchise to own. We do not sell anything. Nothing about the franchising process should be a selling thing. There's not a best, top, hottest, any of those things. This entire process is the most individualized and personalized thing you're going to do outside of probably getting married. And we here at FranCoach are going to help you with that. So that's us. The heck with that. Let's get to our guest and talk a little bit about real estate in the franchise space.
What if your 9-to-5 job didn't last forever? What if there was a better way to create professional success your way without fear of layoffs or downsizing? What if I told you that it's all possible through franchise ownership? Franchise ownership gives you a proven playbook to execute, so you can be in business for yourself, but not by yourself. But with thousands of franchises out there, how do you know which is the best one for you? That's where FranCoach comes in. FranCoach will help build out your ideal business model based on your talents, skills, and core values. Then use our proprietary knowledge of the franchises to bring curated options based on what you want, and then guide you through the vetting process until we find your best match. Individualized, personalized, and 100% free to you. Ready to control your future? Scan the QR code or visit francoach.net and let FranCoach help create your better tomorrow.
All right, we are back on the Franchising 101 podcast, and joining us today, very thrilled to have our guest. Carlie Wilmes is the managing partner and co-founder, though there's a little debate over that. We'll get into it in a second here with Carlie, but of a company called Reimagine CRE. Carlie, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, good. We are as well, and looking forward to talking to you. I've got a bunch. It's hard to have a first. We're almost 270 episodes into this crazy podcast, and you are the very first guest we have had in the commercial real estate space as kind of a franchisor or supplier. So I'm a little late to the party, but you get to be the first. So thanks so much.
I'm so honored to be the first.
Just basically everybody else told me no. You were the only one that was like, sure, I guess I'll do it. So
that's okay. I'm still the first.
You are still the first and only, but we got a bunch of things to talk about, from how commercial real estate, because it can be a scary part of the transition or process for franchise owners getting into this. But you've been around this a long time. This is a people business. I love hearing stories. So give us a little scoop on Carlie and how did we kind of get to here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I never planned being here. It all just, kind of happened on its own, but I'm so glad the way that it played out. I've been in commercial real estate for over 13 years, coming up on 14. And I did not start out with working with franchisees and specializing in that sector within commercial real estate. I actually just started out doing local deals here in Dallas, which is where we're located. And I kind of happened upon working with a franchise and immediately fell in love with the process. It fit my personality much more. And I really enjoyed how much the franchisees leaned on me and my expertise. They typically don't know much, if anything, about commercial real estate. And it was just a lot more exciting and fun looking at, retail space or, even warehouse space or industrial space than it is office space, in my opinion. So I really enjoyed the element of kind of traffic counts and demographics and all that good stuff. And we started working with one franchise group, and they said, "Oh, you did such a great job in Dallas. Can you help us in other markets in Texas?" And then they said, "Well, can you help us in other markets in the United States?" And we kind of created a system to implement the way that we service franchisees across the United States, and became very successful with that. Started working with more and more brands, and there was a real void for it in the market and what we do, assisting franchisees on a national level. So we just continued to work with more and more brands, and here we are today. And we specialize in working with a lot of service brands, so health and wellness, beauty, those type of brands. But we also do some restaurant work, and are constantly meeting new brands. So always evolving.
Nice. Awesome. And then how you get started in this, you kind of get into the franchising. Has it always been as part of Reimagine, or how did that company get started?
So we started Reimagine almost 3 years ago, after COVID. We worked at a bigger firm that didn't specialize in working with franchisees, and that's essentially 95% of what we do. So we really wanted to kind of break off and put more resources, time and energy into just helping franchisees. And so we did that. It was me and my two partners, Jeremy Wright and Jackson Hill. And that's where we are today.
And so I was like, how things get named. Well, why Reimagine? What was kind of that wasn't by accident. So what's the kind of the concept and the thought behind that?
Yeah, great question. So admittingly, Jeremy came up with the name, so he gets the credit. But the reason we decided,
Carlie, he's not here. That was clearly all you. Just take it and run with it. So,
okay, I'll take full credit for it. No, but he came up with a bunch of different ones, and the reason we really liked and resonated with Reimagine is for a couple of reasons. The first being that it kind of plays to needing to reimagine these spaces when you're touring them. A lot of our clientele, when we set them up on tours and they're looking at spaces, they're like, I do not see myself opening my business here. And so we found ourselves just over and over saying, we have to reimagine what it will look like after we complete the build out, and after we redo the storefront, and after you demo out the existing, old restaurant build out. You really have to reimagine it. And so that's part of it. Another part is, reimagining the way a commercial real estate firm kind of treats its brokers. We had good experiences at the firms we worked at before. We also kind of learned what not to do, and we wanted to make being a commercial real estate broker accessible for everyone that's willing to work hard, not just kind of real estate dynasties whose parents do it and that's why they get into it. So we wanted to reimagine kind of the process of being a broker, and being treated with the utmost respect and appreciation by the firm that you work for, because it's a lot of work. And we just kind of found ourselves in a situation where we didn't feel appreciated, and we wanted any broker that works for us and with us to not feel that way.
Love it. And so you make the initial point about the Reimagine is you're walking into I'm a franchisee, I've signed, now I got to find my spot for whatever. And I walk in and here's a shell of a 2,500 square foot space. Maybe it's concrete. Maybe it used to be this was an old Papa John's back in the day and it's been sitting here empty for a year, and I want it to be something in a totally different industry. That's got to be a hard thing for people to be able to see what it looks like now, and then kind of get that mental visual of what it's going to be and all the steps to, wait, there's no room for this. Yes, there is, because we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing that's a good chunk of kind of what you are talking people through, is just that kind of visualization side of things, right?
Absolutely. And there's things that are, you can modify. Like, for example, if the ceiling appears low, there may be a drop ceiling, right? And you don't know that there's space above to the deck. And so we can rip that out and very easily achieve the higher ceiling heights that the client is looking for. And then there's things that are not so fixable. One of the examples I always use is if the space is currently built out as a restaurant with a grease trap and all the things that come with a restaurant build out, a lot of landlords don't want to rip all that out, throw away the infrastructure, and start over fresh with a completely different type of tenant in that space. They'd rather just kind of plug and play another restaurant. So I help my franchisee clients to understand what the landlord's thinking and why they may not be interested, or why they may not be as motivated or responsive, when we're interested in leasing a certain space. It's a lot of times reasons like that, or perhaps the landlord has always planned for this end cap space to be a restaurant, and they even have kind of the infrastructure pre-built out for a patio. A lot of my clients will be like, it's been sitting vacant for 6 months or 12 months. They have to be desperate, but there's things that the landlord has in mind or is planning for the shopping center that we may not be taking into consideration. So I try to guide the franchisees on what are easy fixes and what are going to be more of an uphill battle, so we can, ultimately get to the space they're going to end up as quickly as possible.
So I want to, a couple of things that I want to come back to, but let's dumb it down to the most basic thing right off the bat. So I signed a franchise agreement for a brand that requires a physical space, and though it's not, you guys don't just do like the Class A real estate stuff. There's some other things, but that's a big piece of it, right? So now I need to find a location, and I think if there's any one thing in particular that can, I don't know how to better say this, screw over a franchise owner right out of the gate, is messing this up. And it's the one thing I tell people: at no point should you deviate from the plan the franchise gives you in general. But if you start trying to think you are smarter than commercial real estate people, you are asking for trouble. So at a base level, somebody comes in, they become a franchise owner. Where do you kind of come into that, and just talk about kind of the timeline? We pick you up here and we take you into this point in the journey.
We typically start, of course, once they've joined the franchise brand. It's kind of dangerous to start helping people with real estate before they've actually become a franchisee for a couple of reasons. But once they've actually joined the brand, then we have a real estate kickoff call with them, talk about their market, depending on like their territory, or if they have to stay within, a certain amount of zip codes. We'll kind of talk about where our search areas are going to be. And then what makes us so great when we partner with franchise brands is our intimate knowledge of the brand. So we kind of know how to direct the franchisees based on all the other deals we've done across the country with that specific brand. We know the co-tenants they like to be by. We know whether it's a destination or if visibility and walk-by traffic is super important. Those are two very different, factors, and the type of real estate you go into will depend greatly on, which of those models you are set up on. And I would say the biggest kind of red flag when we're working with franchisees that can cause problems, big problems early on, is not preparing on the timing standpoint for items such as permit approvals. If you start having to pay rent before your business is, even open, or if the construction is complete, that's what we call dead rent, and it can be really bad. You can run out of money quickly, and if you don't have the lease negotiated or the LOI negotiated to account for permit delays, which ultimately are out of your control, it's the city who's approving those permits. You have to get them into the city and apply for them in a timely fashion. But once they're submitted, you're at the mercy of how long those approvals take. And so structuring your LOI and the deal terms is super important. So, I always say half of the battle is finding the piece of real estate that makes sense for your business, but the other half is really securing the deal terms that set you up for success. Because if you run out of time, you can be in big trouble before you even get the opportunity to open your business. So Those are key points we always focus on and help educate the franchisees on.
And I think one of the other things is that whatever that rent amount is that you have negotiated, and it's not changing for the term of that lease, right? Like I may start with more marketing money right off the bat, and then over time, I don't need to spend as much here. I can always adjust that down. This isn't changing. And if you have not like worked with a professional like you and your team, you're probably going to get hosed on that. And then I think, we could probably do a whole episode just on all of the things people don't realize they don't know about this process. But even you start throwing around acronyms or initials, right? We got an LOI, then we need to get TI. Then there's the whole triple net thing, right? There's
PG.
and you're right. And so you're like, wait, what? Like we need a glossary of all of this stuff. And if all that sounds like, what is she talking about? That's just reason why you use, right? You use Carlie or her team, and if the franchisor isn't using her team, shame on them, but their team is probably still really good to be able to help you. You're just never out on your own with this. You mentioned something, you're in Dallas, kind of all started there, but you work with franchises that are placing franchisees all over the country. There's always this fear, I think. But Carlie, how do you know my market, right? My market is special. My market is unique, says basically everyone always. First of all, no, it's not, right? It is, but how do you know? How can you sit there and go, I've never stepped foot in city X, but I know we can help you find the best place at the best kind of negotiated price. How does that work?
Great question. So we consult with local brokers, of course, and then we look at a bunch of different factors to kind of support, yes, this is the best location for you as the franchisee. And the franchisee is the person ultimately deciding which property they go with. So I always explain it, we're kind of Sherpas that are helping them to the top of the mountain through the path of least resistance, right? But we utilize demographics. We look at the co-tenants in a shopping center. That's a really big one. There's, typically clusters, like for our salon suite client, we like to be around other salon suites, and you wouldn't think that normally if you're not.
But wait, what about the competition, Carlie? Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes. So with our deep knowledge of each brand, we know what to look for in each market, whether it's I want to be in a Whole Food anchored shopping center, I want to be surrounded by other salon suites so I can pull stylists from those existing salon suites. And when there's other salon suites around my location, that tells me that there's a demand for salon suites. So all of that's super important. And then we look at in demographics, not only what's currently happening, what the current population is, what the current average household income is, we look at the projected population. What is this market going to look like in 5 years, in 10 years? We look at new developments that are coming in. All of that comes into account. Where our franchisee lives, that's a factor as well, because if they live an hour from a certain, site, and they're supposed to be going there every day and they're supposed to be showing up and running the business, that could cause problems. Even if they say, I don't care, it's an hour from where I live, I'll make the commute every day.
Yes, they do.
Right. We kind of have to take that into account, when we're telling them which sites we feel like have the best opportunities. So all of those factors go into it. We also work in all of these markets all the time. So, there's certain markets where I'm working 5 deals for 5 different franchise brands. They may be all different uses, but I'm talking to all of the local brokers. I'm, finding out information from all of the different businesses that are coming in. We're looking at all of these different site plans for shopping centers. And you really just kind of want to find where your target client is ideally already going. Right. So you want to understand, who the other shoppers are and all of that. And it all comes together pretty beautifully. And it allows us to, by not being typically local ourselves, we look at a market and we analyze it every time like it's the first time. When you use just a local broker we've found that they can sometimes be biased, right? Maybe they had their their wedding at this certain shopping center development, or they had their first kiss here. Or this is where they used to go with their buddies, or this is where their favorite Italian restaurant is. You got to go here. But, when you're not looking at the market as a whole and you just go straight to, your personal favorite locations, that's not typically what's best for the brand. So we go in, we look at all the new development, everything that's going on fresh each and every time. Even if I just finished a transaction in that market, we're analyzing it brand new every time. So it's helpful to kind of have an outsider's opinion on the market for that reason too.
Well, and I mean this in a positive way. It's more impersonal, right? You're looking at the data for the market, plus you also understand the franchise brand, which local real estate guy Bob over here, maybe he kind of knows your area, but he has no clue what that franchise is looking for, what they need. So you're really kind of marrying those two things together, right? So
exactly.
Tell me, like, I'm going to ask a question. I would bet any amount of money I'm going to know what your answer is. What's the biggest mistake somebody makes in this process, a franchisee makes in this process?
Falling in love with a site.
Yes. Can we name names? Can we name names on somebody that you and I both know that's done that? No, that would we don't want to call her out.
No, I love Stephanie. Thankfully, they did fall in love with that site. I mean, I'm trying to remember if she fell, because people will fall in love multiple times too. After a while, they learn, okay, I've got to stop falling in love. It's too early, right? But yeah, she thankfully ended up at the site she fell in love with. So that worked out perfectly. But the reason you don't want to fall in love is because negotiations are like the wild, wild west. There's so many things that can happen. One week, it can look like this is the site I'm ending up at. And the next week, the deal can be dead. And then the week after that, the deal can be alive again. So I try to tell my clients to keep a steady, like, down the middle of the road mindset. Don't get too excited about anything, and definitely don't get too bummed about anything, because ultimately, especially for my clients where a deal may fall through, because let's say Starbucks calls and the landlord would prefer to do a deal with Starbucks, we almost always end up at a better site than where they were thinking they were going to go, where Starbucks took the site. It just always happens that way. So
right, because they're falling in love for the wrong reasons, typically, right?
They are, so, and when you see a site visually, it's you're not seeing the deal terms. So the deal terms is so important as well. And so a site might look amazing, but the landlord may be a landlord that refuses to do TI, which is tenant improvement dollars. It may be a landlord that wants a full 10-year personal guarantee versus a limited personal guarantee, which is one of the huge things we negotiate for our clients. It may have restrictions. There may be an existing tenant in the shopping center that doesn't allow you to offer your full menu of services. There could just be so many things. So you really don't want to get super excited until you have a signed lease. You can get a little excited when you have a signed LOI, because you're kind of like engaged at that point. The odds of it falling through after a signed LOI are slim, but it can still happen. But yes, falling in love is never a good idea. Just kind of keep an open mindset is my number one piece of advice.
Yeah, and the amount of things that I think, as you said something earlier, kind of going through there, I'm like, oh, I forgot, like, that was even a factor in here. We probably could do this whole long, like, 10-page list of things you didn't know you got to think of, and kind of like the value prop of why you work with Carlie. One of the other things I think people sitting there in that franchisee space do not remotely think about is, you think that because that space is available, or that's been available for any length of time, that landlord is desperate, or that landlord wants you, that we don't think about the vetting in reverse. So I know your team really does a fantastic job of kind of helping promote that franchisee to make them look like a good candidate. But talk a little bit about that, and like, wait, you mean somebody won't want to take my money? Yes, maybe somebody won't want to take your money in that space. Why?
Yeah, a lot of people come into the process thinking it's going to be similar to residential. It could not be more different than residential. And landlords, they look at their shopping center, if it's a multi-tenanted shopping center, as its own ecosystem. And they may feel like if there's a barber shop, they don't want to do a salon suite. And to us, that's like, well, we're different from a barber shop. We, offer Botox and injections and all these other services that the barber shop can continue operating. And, we're not going to try to steal their stylists or their, barbers. But the landlord doesn't want to offend, that existing barbershop. They've been a tenant of the landlords for many years. And even though they could technically put us in the shopping center, we need to take into account the relationship the landlord has with that tenant, right? And you're exactly right about spaces sitting vacant. These landlords typically own many shopping centers. They're receiving rent and revenue from all of them, from tiny tenants to huge tenants. And so they would rather wait for the right tenant to go in their shopping center that they feel confident in, that they think is going to make it, than they would, taking a chance on a business or a first-time business owner that doesn't have maybe a operational history and has never done anything like this before. That's scary to the landlord. And, it's not just the risk of the business closing down, the landlord not receiving rent anymore. It looks bad when a business goes out of business in a shopping center, when they shutter their doors. That can affect the other co-tenants in the shopping center. It kind of creates bad juju when you're like, oh gosh, nothing can stay alive in that space, right? They want to avoid that. And it takes a lot of time to get these deals negotiated. So it's not a simple fix of just sliding someone else in. They have to hire a leasing agent again, and they have to go through that whole process. So they really are selective as to who they work with. Yeah.
And so again, part of what you're doing is promoting the franchisee, promoting that brand, because you may have a landlord or whoever you're working with there that's like, wait, I've never heard of that franchise before, and being able to share and to know, well, hey, they're typically in shopping centers just like this, and they're in all of these markets kind of around the country where you can almost kind of like mic drop on the behalf of the franchisee how good this brand is and why you want this tenant, correct?
Yeah. So we're we're real estate brokers. We're therapists as well. So we help the franchisees handle just like the mental toughness that comes throughout this process. And then we also like cheerleaders. And, the biggest fan for these franchise brands, we get the local landlords and agents who represent these properties excited about the use. We educate them on what it is and how many locations they have across the country, how well they're doing, how fast they're growing. We show them landlord decks that we create that show virtual tours of the brand, pictures, information on how many locations, the founder's story, as well as the actual franchisee's background, why, they're going to be a good fit to open this business in this certain shopping center. And it's all done strategically to get the franchisee the best deal possible. Because if the landlord's excited about the brand and the use, and they're excited about having that specific franchisee operating this, franchise brand, then the landlord's going to give us more TI. They're going to give us more free rent. They're going to give us more of a discount on the base rent. So all of those factors, from day one are really important. And we make sure to present them in a certain way that, franchisees and their franchisors benefit from.
And hopefully by the time people get to you, they've already kind of learned that, because we'll get folks that'll come into us at FranCoach and, I'll just, think that they can decide which franchise they want to buy. And I just say I want to do it and write them a check and they're going to say yes. I'm like, no, they're vetting you also, right? It's cheesy, but I always use the dating analogy, right, with this. And so they kind of get to that point, and then they kind of realize, oh, I actually have to make sure that franchise wants me too. Mm-hmm. Now they're franchise owners. Now they come to you. They should hopefully already kind of get that and see how you're there to help. Hey, I am here to help put you in the best light, find you the best place for that. So again, they've got that kind of real true support agent in what you guys are doing, which is fantastic.
We're really just matchmakers. That's what we do.
There's a lot of similarities between what you guys do and what we do. It's like, you have no agenda on which location. You want them in the best location at the best price. I don't care which franchise people start. I want them in the best one for them. So,
right. Just because then there's nothing better. my goal is always to get a call a year later saying, I'm killing it at my first location and I'm ready to start looking for number 2 or number 3 or number 4.
Yes.
That's our goal. And I love it when that happens.
So, and this, you may have just answered this question, but what's the part of working with the franchisees that you like the most?
I like how excited they are. I really enjoy working with individuals who are, hoping to leave their corporate job, or maybe they recently have, maybe they just retired and their lifelong goal has been to own their own business. They get really giddy and excited, and you don't necessarily see that with like corporate retailers or corporations who do this every day for their job. You can see the franchisees in their eyes, they're envisioning their future and the wheels are turning, and it's really exciting to get to work with people like that. So I would say that's the best part. They're also just super motivated. There's nothing I love more than, when we present a market study to a franchisee and then the next day they have told me they've driven by all of them. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, you were so excited to do this. And it's fun to work with franchisees when they're excited about opening their own business. So that would be probably my favorite part.
So, and because it's all rainbows and unicorns and everybody is perfect and amazing to work with, you probably won't have an answer for this question, but what's maybe something that's not so great?
Not so great would be having to kind of be the messenger of reality. So educating them on how long it takes would be a good example. Or like you mentioned earlier, this landlord is not interested in our use. Perhaps that landlord was recently burned because they had a different franchise brand in their shopping center go dark and they lost a lot of money and they're still sour about it. So having to, I think, be the bearer of bad news to the franchisee and tell them it is normal for landlords to take a week or 2 to respond to an LOI versus a day or 2, right? And it is normal to not hear back from them for this long. All of that, I can see they're kind of bummed sometimes when I'm having to give them that news. But, that's part of what we do. We educate them on what's normal and what's not normal. And it can take a long time, especially if you're trying to get the most advantageous deal terms for the tenant. You could sign a lease next week if you wanted, but it would be on the landlord's terms. And you wouldn't have a negotiated lease and you'd probably be in a lot of trouble. So you want to take the time to investigate and push the landlord for the absolute best deal terms. And I think a lot of people think it's just going to happen a lot faster than it does. And so we have to have that conversation a lot, that it is a little slower than what they probably had in mind, but we do everything in our power to speed it up and to make sure everything's happening as fast as possible.
Right. It's going to be probably conversations like this. Well, Carlie, I sent that information over to the landlord an hour ago. I haven't heard back. Right. I'm
right.
Like, it's your only space you're looking at. It is not remotely their only space they are in charge of. Right. And so just kind of, again, understanding the overall vetting process with that. So we talk a lot about the kind of the shiny object retail space, right, that we all see and we walk into. It's not the only thing you guys do from a real estate perspective as well. Talk about some of the other kind of sites or locations you may help people with.
Yeah, we do a lot of what I call flex space, which is flexible space. So it's kind of a hybrid between office and retail. And that's been a sector I've seen a lot of franchise brands start leaning into because it's a lot less expensive. It's not as, it doesn't have the flashy visibility as some of those Class A retail shopping centers, but you can have flex space locations like down the street from those flashy shopping centers. So you get the same audience, you're still in that retail corridor, but you're paying a much lower rental rate. And perhaps that certain franchisee just leans more into marketing and they, are just as successful. So we do a lot of flex space. We do a lot of medical office. So, a lot of longevity centers, testosterone clinics. That's a GLP-1 is obviously on fire. So we do a lot of that. And then we also do just traditional office space as well. And we do, let's see here, which one am I forgetting? Classic industrial, not so much, but mainly retail, We do a lot of like second floor retail space. So if it's in like a multi-use shopping center, we can again capture a lower rental rate. So sometimes you'll see like hybrid retail office, above the traditional retail. And then above that is, apartments or traditional office. And you can secure really good deal terms on those spaces too for businesses that don't necessarily need the walk by traffic.
Yeah. And I'm sure this changes. This is, I forgot what date it is today, but it is November 13th when this is dropping of 2025. So we're going to clarify that also. What are some big trends or anything you're kind of seeing in the industry right now?
I would see a lot of brands are getting smaller with their footprints. A lot of brands are adding on different services than maybe they initially offered, just to expand revenue streams. And that's important to know, again, because you need to mention all of those uses in your LOI, letter of intent, early on. You can't just decide later on after you've signed the lease that you're going to start providing infrared saunas when that's not something that was detailed in your use language in your lease document. So I would see a lot of brands doing that. And like I said, looking at different types of real estate, there's not much Class A retail space available right now in the market. It's a all-time low on vacancy rates. So you have to figure out how to make those other types of real estate work so you can continue to grow nationally. And there's ways to do it. So we've become, really good at getting creative and reimagining spaces, if you will, turning spaces that you wouldn't normally think may be a good fit for a certain business into just a home run.
Love it. And again, I like how you worked Reimagine right back in there too. And that's where, again, I think if you're not, I think as a franchisor brand for sure, but just probably all of us in general, if you can't be agile and ready to kind of change and adapt, you're just like, it's adapt or die basically for this. And that you guys are really doing that. And in conjunction with those franchise brands is fantastic. So quick little thing here. So let's do a glossary recap. LOI means what?
Letter of intent.
TI?
TI is tenant improvement allowance. And I'll give you a little bit more definition for the listeners. So LOI, or letter of intent, is how you open up the conversation of negotiations with the landlord. So it's making an offer on a house, if you will, and they are non-binding. And then, TI is tenant improvement allowance. And that is money that the landlord reimburses to the tenant, typically after they complete their construction. We do try to get cash injections so our clients can see that money as they complete, for example, like 50% of their construction, they get 50% of their TI reimbursed to them versus having to wait till 100% of completion. But that money is used to help offset construction costs. And it's a big piece of what we negotiate, because some landlords will only offer a certain amount, and you can play the landlords off of each other and say, well, the landlord down the street is offering me 50 in TI and you're only offering me 25. So I'm going to go with them, right? So that's really important. One of the big ones we negotiate for our clients.
Yeah, I was going to say we like TI, and the last one that I'm not even sure I'm completely understanding. This one is a fun one: triple net.
Triple nets, yes. So triple nets are operating expenses, and they consist of property taxes, property insurance, and common area maintenance. So if you look on LoopNet, for example, a lot of times they'll have the base rent, but it will just say like plus nets, and it won't say the number. So that's a really important piece to understand, because you might think, oh, great, this property is only $20 a square foot. But if the nets are 15, that's on top of the $20 base rent. And the nets aren't negotiable. Those are direct pass through. Sometimes you can finagle negotiating like a gross lease if you need it to be structured that way. But typically the retail spaces are almost always triple net. And it's the landlord divvying up the property taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance to all the tenants based on their pro rata share.
One of the many, many reasons why you should never, ever, 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 ever try to negotiate and find your own commercial real estate space as a franchise owner. And for our listeners, all 9 of you now, is there's a pop quiz. Write into us at francoach.net. Tell us what LOI means, triple nets rather, and TI. Yeah. So first person to write in and say they got that, we'll send them a fancy FranCoach and Franchising 101 podcast. So I can't wait for all the responses for that. Last thing I want to fire at you, Carlie, is, and I don't know if there's maybe anything we haven't covered about what you guys do at Reimagine, or just in general, kind of this whole process that we haven't talked about that we really need to make sure everybody understands today.
I would say we'll just highlight again kind of our specialty. So we help franchisees and franchisors scale nationwide, and we create a system, a protocol that can be repeated so you can count on having a consistent level of service. And we also know what to look for when we are selecting sites to show franchisees, as well as negotiating deal terms. And although we aren't local, we do consult with local brokers, and we utilize our software to confirm that the demographics, traffic counts, all that good stuff are going to be a good fit for that specific business model. And we educate you throughout the whole process as well. So I would say one of the differentiators for us at Reimagine is we like doing this. We like working with franchisees. We like explaining what all of this means. A lot of the feedback we get from our clients is when I worked with another broker, they were frustrated. I kept asking what triple nets were, and they were frustrated that I didn't understand, that this was going to involve a personal guarantee. And we pride ourselves on holding the franchisee's hand throughout the entire process. There's no dumb question. We want you to feel confident about the location that you're ultimately signing a lease with, and we want you to be successful so we can help you with subsequent locations.
Yeah, so if there's a franchisor out there listening and you're not using Reimagine, what the heck is wrong with you? Get on the ball.
Right.
And franchise owners, hopefully you get to work with them, but just in general, like, work with somebody in this space for sure. And so, Carlie, I want to thank you for coming on today to be on the Franchising 101 podcast. But we also have to tell everybody, if you just haven't had enough of Carlie today, guess what? You can find her tomorrow night on the Franchising 360 show with me and Danielle. So it won't just be me; it'll also be her with Carlie on the Franchising 360 show. So kind of excited. This will be your television debut to talk about real estate as well. So we're excited. And for all of you that don't know, Biz TV 8 Eastern 5 Pacific, and then pops on our YouTube channel next week. So do you have like a big party planned for this tomorrow night? Like we got like popcorn and like all sorts of good things for this, right?
Oh yeah, we got a huge watch party. Everyone is very excited.
Cool. Well, you don't mind if Danielle and I pop over, do you? We'll
Absolutely not. Come on over to the Reimagine office. It's gonna be a big party.
Excellent. Which then just kind of like totally blows it if anybody thought we were doing that live on Friday, but
right.
We're not. So, but thank you so much for joining us here on the Little Franchising 101 podcast, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow night on our fun TV show. But as always, a pleasure chatting with you, and thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Tim. I had a blast.
I'd once again like to thank Carlie Wilmes from Reimagine CRE for joining us today to talk about commercial real estate in the franchising world. What great stuff. Cannot believe it's taken me this long to get Carlie and that topic discussed here on the podcast. So please forgive me for that, but we've got it covered. Again, want to learn a little bit more about this? You don't have to wait all that long. Tune in tomorrow night to the Franchising 360 show. Danielle Wright and I will actually have Carlie on as a guest, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on Biz TV. You can find that basically on all your TV apps. Watch it online too if you want. Next week, it'll be on our YouTube channel, the FranCoach YouTube channel, FranCoach for You. Podcast is there too, but you already know how to find that. TV shows there, and we've got a bunch of new content rolling out towards the end of this year for you as well. When you are ready to learn a little bit more and start kind of taking that first step towards your personal journey of learning and franchise ownership, our FranCoach team is here to help you. FranCoach.net. Again, there's never, ever any fee for our service. So when you are ready to take that first step towards creating your better tomorrow, reach out to our team.